My name is Josh Wagner. I'm a park ranger with Tennessee State Parks, and we're here at Alvin C. York State Park as part of the state of Tennessee's commemoration and education efforts as part of the First World War. Tennessee's involvement began in 1917, and specifically Alvin C. York played a major role in that war and being the recipient of the Medal of Honor. And we're here today at that park with the first opening day of a recreated trench system we've constructed that hopefully the public can come out and see firsthand what warfare was like during the First World War for Tennesseans. Trench warfare develops out of necessity due to the technology that's being utilized during the war. So the bringing about of machine guns, heavy artillery, things like that made men had to go deeper into the earth to protect themselves. So really beginning in 1914 in Europe, before the United States was even involved in the war, trenches began being constructed across the continent. At times, these trenches would stretch for tens and tens of miles, crossing across massive amounts of countryside in France and Belgium. Normally, they would be constructed at least 5 or 6 feet into the earth, with 3 or 4 feet in width so men can move up and down the trench systems. Today, our trench replicates a style that was more common around battlefields like Verdun and the Somme. Construction of the trenches would normally involve heavier equipment than the shovels we're using today. The soldiers would have been issued larger shovels, but each man inevitably was issued smaller shovels they carried on their back all the time. These smaller shovels would have been used whenever they needed to dig. So if they couldn't bring up larger equipment, the small shovels had to suffice and would be used to dig trenches even as large as what we have here today. Dugouts would have been pretty common in trenches built to this scale, because men would have had to have places to sleep safely. So you can imagine 20 or 30 men rotating shifts being on watch over the trenches, and the rest of the other 20 or 30 guys being asleep in the dugouts. The Germans were known for building incredibly large, intricate dugouts that would hold 100, 150 men, something like that. So very, very large scale operations. Trenches would have been utilized for carrying messages. So a communications trench may run 100, 200, 300 yards back behind this section to a whole nother trench network. So that way messages could travel back and forth without anyone ever being exposed to the enemy's fire.
My name is Travis Dover. I'm the park manager here at the Sergeant Alvin C. York State Historic Park. A little bit about what we're doing here is we're occupying a recently constructed trench that we've been working on. And what we're trying to do is add a living history component to better tell the York story here at the park. This trench is constructed on the original farm that Alvin York was given through the Rotary Club when he returned home from the Great War in 1919. This was originally about a 400-acre farm, of which the state park system owns roughly 350 of those acres, which includes many of the farm outbuildings, the historic York home, the historic grist mill that Alvin York purchased, and a reproduction of his general store, which now exists as our visitor center. Part of this effort here is to change the visitor experience, and adding a living history component to what we're doing, we feel will better help to tell that story. The younger generation now is a generation of technology. What we hope to do is to be able to bring kids, provide them something that's actually tangible, something they can put their hands on, put their feet on, rather than reading about trench warfare in a book or someone telling them the story. They can come to the namesake of the most famous soldier from the Great War, Sergeant Alvin C. York, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, and they can not only see the home that he was given because of those actions and things that he did for his country and for his community, but also they can see something firsthand that allows them to get a better idea of what those situations were that those guys were living and fighting in almost 100 years ago.